Good morning, guys. Today is September the 29th, and your assignment today is to read The Night Face Up. That is our next selection for this week. Yesterday, you were supposed to have done the level up tutorial over making inferences and done the get ready, which included some vocabulary. Today, you're going to do a grammar studio lesson over simple subject and simple predicate, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you're going to read The Night Face Up. Now, the test scores have been pretty low on the reading selections lately. You need to read carefully. I suspect that some of you are not reading. You need to read it more than once. So as you read, always you have the embedded questions, and I will always grade these embedded questions. You cannot answer them with one or two words. You have to answer them with complete sentences, 2 or 3 complete sentences. You have to annotate what it's asking you to do, whether that's highlighting or underlining. You have to cite evidence if it asks you to do that, and you have to answer the question that you're being asked in order to get credit for that, okay? I will get increasingly tougher on my grading of these as time goes by because you should be getting better at them. All right. The author was an Argentine teacher, novelist, and short story writer, a vocal opponent of the Argentinian government. Cortázar fled to Paris in 1951, where he remained until his death. He is best known for deftly weaving fantasy, hallucinations, and dreams into his fiction, as he does in this story. So it's very important for you to know that this is not going to be just a straightforward, realistic story. Something else that you need to know for this text is that the Aztec sacrifice alluded to, remember we talked about illusion last week, they reference an Aztec sacrifice. And sacrifice was important to the Aztec religious life. Human victims were usually prisoners of war or slaves. Their sacrifice was thought to appease the gods and to make the gods stronger. As you read, pay attention to the details that help you develop a mental image of the story's 2 cultural and historical settings. Okay? If you think back to the poem that we read called Without Title, there were 2 cultural and historical settings. There was the Native American past and there was the urban present. So you're going to be figuring out what the 2 cultural and historical settings are in this story. This is a mentor text for a short story. You'll be writing a short story towards the end of this 6 weeks. And this is a good example for you to use as a mentor text when you write your story. So make sure that you read this part of the story. It chunks it for you. Chunking is a good reading strategy, which means just breaking the text into shorter pieces. And so having these embedded questions does that for you automatically. So just read up until this point. Also remember that you can listen to it. You can play the audio. However you do it, make sure that you've read it. Highlight several details in paragraph 2 that help establish the setting of the first parallel plot. Now, parallel plot means 2 things that are going on at the same time. We're all familiar with movies where you've got one plot going on and then they start talking about other characters and that plot's going on. Sometimes 3 or 4 at the same time. So there's two plot structures, settings going on here. Based on these details, how would you describe the tone of this part of the story? Cite evidence in your answer. So I want us to start working with a tone words list. And so let's just go to this one. So I just Googled tone words lists, and here is an alphabetical list of all kinds of tone words, okay? So when you're trying to describe the tone, you can use words like this. Is it vindictive? And it gives you the definition. Sympathetic, reverent, pretentious, pensive. Now, kind of make sure that you know the meaning of the word before you try to use it. You can also look up other lists, but I think this is a good one because it has the definition of the word out beside it, and there's 155 of them. Okay, so This is aprilharper.pbworks.com. I just Googled tone words list, and that's how I found that. So in that answer, you're going to need to describe the tone, which is the author's attitude towards what he or she is writing about. This is a he in this case. So it is the tone. What are the author's feelings as he's writing? Okay. And we're going to read the next little part. And you come to another question. Highlight 3 details in paragraph 6. Not 1, not 2, but 3 details that help establish the setting and tone of the second parallel plot. So highlight something that lets us know where and when this second parallel plot is taking place. How is the tone of the second plot different from the tone of the first plot? These questions require thought and attention to detail. You can't just slop something down. You've really got to think about it. So how does the tone, so you already established a tone for the first one. So what is the tone of the second plot? And how is it different from the first? Then highlight the sensory details in this paragraph that appear again and again. Again and again is one of our signposts. It just means repetition. Sensory details mean things that apply to your sense of sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound, hearing. Okay, so anything having to do with the 5 senses. So highlight any sensory details that appear in this paragraph. So I think they're talking about the paragraph above. Yeah. How do these details change the mood and the tone of the plot, and what do you predict will happen next? That's a lot to write about here. So how do these details change the mood? The mood is how it makes you feel. So in these so far, they've been talking about tone and mood. You're going to be talking about how the author feels about it, how you feel about it, what emotions it evokes. So you're going to need to be using words off of this list. And it's very important. I want you to predict. Making a prediction is a very good way to connect with the text, and I want you to do that. Then highlight where the setting changes from the jungle to the hospital. So once you get to that question, we're going over it together. It kind of sets you straight on what the first 2 were, or what the 2 settings are. So where does that transition happen, and how does the author bridge or connect the 2 plots so that the story flows smoothly from one plot line to another? Place brackets. I think you could do that in your textbook, obviously. I don't think you can do it here. Actually, I just want you to skip this question. We'll talk about this question later, okay? So skip this one. Next, highlight the physical actions that the main character takes in paragraph 14. So you're just going to look up here, and what does he physically do? What does the main character physically do? Based on these details, how would you describe the pace or speed of the plot that takes place in the hospital? Okay, so is it a slow pace? Is it a fast pace? And give evidence from the text to support that. In paragraph 16, highlight 3 historical and cultural details that help develop the setting of the Aztec plot. Okay, cultural details. We did this before with the poem having to do with Native American culture. Based on the details you marked, how would you describe the historical period and the culture of the Aztecs? Cite evidence in your answer. So you probably know a little bit about the Aztecs already. So what was their culture like? But you talk about it based on these details that you see here. And then the last one, what does the main character suddenly realize in the second half of paragraph 17? Highlight at least 2 clues in the text that let us know somewhere in the middle of this paragraph he realizes something. Usually towards the end of a story, if it's a sort of a suspenseful story, there will be something that's revealed near the end. So, two clues. What does he suddenly realize in the second half of paragraph 17? What does this realization suggest about the man's fate? His fate means what's going to happen to him. Okay? So we're making an inference here. What is the inference about what's going to happen to him now? Okay, and that's your read part of your lesson for today. The other thing that you're going to do is, I've got to find it here real fast. The Grammar Studio, you're going to be identifying simple subjects and predicates. Last time we did the full subject and predicate. Now you're going to just be identifying the one, usually one word, the one word subject, and the verb usually has more than one word. So you can read all of this yourself, but I wanted to kind of go over at least one with you. Select the words that make up the simple subject in the sentence below. One unit in my literature textbook is about African American poets of the 50s and 60s. So what is about African American poets? What is the main word in this sentence that we're talking about? We're talking about the textbook, okay? Literature describes the textbook. In my literature textbook describes it. Actually, I'm wrong. Sorry about that, guys. I just realized that this is a prepositional phrase. What is about African American poets of the 50s and 60s? Not the whole textbook. It's this unit. Okay? Number 2, select the words that make up the simple subject in the sentence below. The boy in front of me read one poem with great feeling. This sentence is about the boy. Okay? So that's how that works. And then down here at the bottom, select the sentence that has the complete predicate underlined. Okay? So here in Chicago, we sit down for a big Thanksgiving dinner. Here in Chicago, we sit down for a big Thanksgiving dinner. It shouldn't have we because we is the subject. So I'm going to eliminate these two answers because it shouldn't have we. That's the subject of the sentence. So it should be sit down for a big Thanksgiving dinner here in Chicago. So which one does that? It should be this one. All right. So that's how that works. Make sure that you do all 10 and all 10 on that. If you don't finish, it's for homework. If you don't finish either this one or reading The Night Face Up. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. Make sure that you read thoroughly. Make sure that you don't get behind. And I'll talk to you soon.